Okay, so in the last tutorial we discussed about the setter injection. That is how we can set the values of a member variable of a class through the set method of a member variable. So similarly we have another way of setting the member variables of a class, that is known as constructor injection. So today we discussed about that. Constructor injection is similar, except in this case you will use the construct arg sub element of a bean to specify the arguments to pass to a beans constructor at instantiation. Like if you can see in the spring.xml, what I am using with the bean is the property sub element. Now instead of property sub element, I'll use the constructor arg sub element. So let's do it for the director class. We have a director class and the member variable is set A. Instead of doing it through set method, I'll do it through the constructor. Let me have a constructor first. Sorry, I wrote this dot city over here. We'll be having, say, string city, and this dot city is equal to city. Now in spring.xml, the only change I need to do is I'll just have constructor arg. The most important is, in the case of property, you need to use the name tag and then the value tag, but here the name attribute is not needed. Why? Because here the name is just used to specify that, hey, I am calling set address 1, set address 2, but here the constructor is just 1, so it knows that it needs to call this and then pass the appropriate member variables. So value, let me call it, say, Delhi. Now in the display data, instead of getting the, let's just comment it out. Here I have just changed the application context also to abstract one, because this helps us to close it. So this was the change I did. Next I'll do director equal to context dot get bean it's asking for casting, so I did it to director. Also one more thing, if you are using the constructor injection, there is no need to have the setter and getter method. You can comment this setter and getter method because we are not using it anywhere. We are setting the value of a member variable of a director class through the constructor, and at the time of instantiation it is going to look for that constructor and pass the appropriate value. So let's just run it and see if we are getting the correct data or not. Yeah, you can see some other things also, that is this which we didn't discussed in the last one, so you can just forget this for the time being. You can see that we are calling the director address is Delhi, so that is the main one. This is just because in between we write the bean post processor, which we'll study in the later tutorial. So yes, we are getting whatever we are passing it over to the constructor. So it's very much similar to property, but the only difference is we are using the constructor argument tag. And another difference between the both is that it does not contain a name attribute, whereas the property sub element contains the name attribute. Clear? Now it's not that we can have only one constructor in a class. We can have more than one constructor inside a class. Okay, let me just do that if we are having more than I registered did be in post processor, so I've commented it out now. Here the constructor is accepting only one argument. Let's say we are having, suppose, another argument, say int h number. Fine, there is no need to have a setter getter because we are doing the constructor injection. And then we have int h number, and we'll do this dot house number equal to house number, right? So now here in the director class, what we'll do is we are just passing the one constructor arg. But if we are having two arguments to the constructor, we need to have the two constructor argument tags. It's not that you can write the comma separated. Value Delhi, and value you can say 255 since it's an integer. Right, so you passed it as string, but at the back end the Spring has a property editor classes just like Spring MVC, which do the conversion for us and converting it in this to an integer, right? So now if we try to run it out, let me just not shut it down. Okay, let me just run this. I'm getting director address is Delhi. Because we are just printing this get city, let me do the you can simply write house number if you don't want the getter setters to be done. Now in the display data, I'm getting Delhi 245, right? So what it does, it takes the order wise, like the first value is passed to the first argument, which is my string, and the second argument is passed to the second argument. That is perfectly fine. But suppose I just shuffle these arguments, like now the first argument I'm passing it this and second is this. Now 245 should go to the string city and this should go to the int house number. But when the Spring at backend use the property editor class to convert it, it will see that the data types are not appropriate because the value we are setting is not correct. So we'll get the unsatisfied dependency exception. This is very important. So how to resolve these issues? So any idea? Yes, there are two ways in which we can deal with this ambiguity among the constructor argument. First is by index and second is by type. So we'll discuss both. Let's first discuss the index one. What I can do is I'll just specify over here, even if I'm writing it, even if I'm shuffling the arguments, what I'll do is I'll just write index equal to 0, index equal to 1. Now what it's going to do, it's going to 0 means the first argument, but we don't want 245 to the first, so we need to change it this to 0 and this to 1. Now we'll not get the unsatisfied dependency injection because it knows that this is the value for the 0th argument, that is the first one, and this is the argument value for the second, which is int house number. So this is perfect. So now if we try to run it, we should get the output. Yes, we are getting it. So the constructor ambiguity is being removed by the index attribute. The second way we have is the type attribute, the way we can remove this ambiguity. It actually lets you specify exactly what type each constructor argument is supposed to be so that Spring can make a decision to which argument goes where. What does I mean by this is, let me just remove this index which I did earlier. I'll just say that this is a type of int, right? And now Spring will make the decision as to which argument is going to go where, even if you're shuffling it. This is java.lang.string. Fine. We need to tell the type this data is of. Now it automatically goes to the argument member variable which takes int and the another to the string, right? So let me just run it. Yes, we are getting the same result as we are getting with the index one. So this is how the constructor ambiguities are being removed by using the index and the type. So that's all about the constructor injection. We can just have one more thing, that where to use constructor and where not to use setter. So we'll just discuss in the next tutorial.